Our guest today is Clif Chamblis, founder and CEO of TriDefi, a platform bringing eSports tournaments to the masses and connecting sponsor dollars to measurable ROI. With players earning tokenized rewards they can use, trade, or stake. Clif previously founded GlomTom, which was acquired by SCUF Gaming, and TriDefi grew out of his MBA capstone project into what is currently an MVP targeting its first large-scale tournament. Clif, thanks for making time today.
Thanks for having me, Brad.
No, my pleasure. To start off, I'd love if you give a quick overview of just your career journey and your company, TriDefi, who you serve, what you help them do, and why it matters now.
Sure. So my background career-wise has been in pharma and medical devices, and that's given me a lot of opportunity and time to pursue my entrepreneurship endeavors. And I've always been into different entrepreneurship ideas since I graduated college. And it wasn't until I started my first company that I actually had some success with it. And so that has led me on a path to where I am today with TriDefi. And like you said earlier, after I got my master's degree in business, TriDefi was my final project, a capstone project, and I decided to take it and run with it. And so I've raised pre-seed funds for it and to get it started. It's an offshore entity based out of the British Virgin Islands, and even though I'm here in the US. And it is a global esports platform, like you mentioned, but it's also merging Web3, which we can talk a little bit more about later, as well as wealth management. So it's actually merging three enormous industries into one platform. And so TriDefi is a different kind of product. It's not a physical product. It's a digital web-based product, right? To get people, so the accessibility is going to be is amazing with this.
Yeah, I think it'd be valuable just to explain a bit. Esports, I think people understand, but the DeFi space, the Web3 space, the intersection that's there, could you just provide a little bit of context?
Sure. So the gaming industry as a whole is worth over $100 billion. It's worth more than Hollywood and most major industries in the world. And the esports portion of that industry has been growing by the billions. And most of that money is from sponsorship dollars. So right now, if you're on to be in the esports as a player, you have to be on a team and get brought into that team. And then you're a very select group of people, right, that get to go to these big arenas and have these tournaments. Well, that to me is very exclusive. And what I want to do is open that up globally, or at least to larger audiences, so that anyone from home can be part of these tournaments that are sponsored by large companies like Amazon and whatnot, and they can compete on our platform to be part of those. And so there's an accessibility there. Now, Web3 is a big industry because you've got these tokens with cryptocurrency, right? And the reason that's important is that with that Web3, I'm able to create a basic economy and give people opportunities to earn assets and income that they couldn't earn before, and trade things and purchase things. And so it's commerce involved with that. So there's accessibility to the pro esports scene. There's accessibility to acquire tokens and create an economy and do things with those tokens. And where the wealth management comes in is that's obviously an enormous industry. And what we seek to do with TriDefi is when people win tournaments, let's say they win a portion of the prize tokens, we will encourage them to stake some of those tokens with us, which we will put into a wealth management vehicle. In other words, in order for people to acquire some wealth there, or they could just keep their tokens and spend them in our marketplace, or do other things, trade and whatnot with other users, or they can swap our token for Bitcoin and then go cash out the Bitcoin, swap it for currency, and then actually collect money from playing these games and winning these tournaments. But the wealth management is important because we want to encourage people to be able to stake some money and make a little bit of money and teach people how to acquire wealth. And it just gives people opportunities that they never had before.
Is there anybody playing in this space today, or is this something that's totally new that you found?
This idea is pretty new. The idea of tournaments isn't new, and there's a
Right.
lot of websites that have tournaments, but a lot of them charge people to participate in tournaments. Everyone, chips in some money to be part of the tournament. I'm looking at a bigger picture here. And I had some experience with that in my previous company, GlomTom. You can ask me about that if you'd like. So to answer your question, there's no one really doing that type of thing right now because it's actually very challenging to merge all these things together. And
If it was easy, everyone would do it, right?
if it was easy, everyone would do it. But this is very complicated. And we've spent a lot of money on the tokenomics and the white paper and making sure that the idea is fleshed out for investors and for people to understand how it is this company is supposed to work. The business plan was 60 pages when we created it for our master's program, and it's a similar length for our white paper. It's very detailed, and it's great if you can't fall asleep and you want to read it. It'll put you right out. But that's the idea behind this. But the big picture, again, is merging industries and accessibility and helping people participate and build wealth.
So the core problem you were looking at was the participation, the savings aspect.
The core problem is people are barred from participating in esports. They're not part of these exclusive teams. They're not going to schools where they're part of an esports team, and they're not going to these big tournaments that are held in these stadiums, right? That's a very exclusive scene. I'm trying to break that open and expand that industry, which is good for both companies and the players. And half of the world games right now. So there is a growing need for people to want to do things and even monetize some of their skills in esports. And for people not familiar with esports, there are very competitive video games out there where individuals or teams can compete, and the competition is very fierce, and it's become how to put it this way? Someday I wouldn't be surprised if there's like an ESPN channel dedicated to esports, because it's becoming popular, and schools are offering scholarships now for people who are good at these games.
Yeah, my first kind of official exposure to esports is my daughter's high school has an esports team. It's run as a club, and I was like, a what? And yeah, they have they build their machines. They have what's essentially a large closet that they meet in, and they have it all like with the monitors and so forth with gaming chairs, and it's totally cool. I had no idea, but the academic sponsor that's there said that a lot of his kids are now getting scholarships for going to college for this, which it just blew my mind.
It's incredible, the opportunities that people have. So it's a growing segment, but most of the money in that segment is coming from sponsors.
Yeah.
That's where the money's coming from, because the viewership is growing.
Yeah. So you mentioned GlomTom just a bit ago. So you founded GlomTom, sold it to SCUF Gaming. What did that exit teach you about shipping fast, polishing versus polishing something and getting it perfect? What were some of the key learnings that you had?
Okay, so when forming a business or a company, the enemy of good is better. Is that what we're getting at here?
Yeah.
So a lot of people get stuck in the planning stage and just want to do more research and make sure. And we obviously want to be risk averse, but at the same time, we just have to do it, and we just have to go for it. And with GlomTom, and I published a book about this called Entrepreneur Power Up. And the story is about how I started GlomTom, and then I ran GlomTom for a year. I didn't use any paid ads to promote it, but I grew the company, and then I sold it to Scuff in a little over a year. And so it's kind of an emotional story of what I went through, because I had no ad money. I had no money to spend on ads. So I had to figure out, how am I going to promote this company? Where am I going to find the customers? Who's going to like this product? But getting ready for that company, I did spend about a year researching on my own. And I started small and tried to find friends and family even that can create everything from my logo to the product itself. And I learned really quickly that to see my vision come true, I needed professional help, that I couldn't just lean on people that I knew in my life that had these skills. It just wasn't going to work out. So I hired a engineering design firm, prototyped the product. They connected me with manufacturers. I went right into mass manufacturing. I raised funds several different ways and wrote checks that I'd never imagined I would write. Like a real gut check when you're writing a check for tens of thousands of dollars, right? To get something manufactured. And the way I did it at first, a lot of people to add what you're talking about is that a lot of people are like, well, you should just get this product and put it in your garage. I'm like, no, because if I start selling 5, 10, 15 units a day, then I've got to go to the post office or whatever, and with these boxes and then I'm handling all the logistics. And the idea behind running a company, especially as a CEO, is you need to outsource everything possible so that you can spend your time growing the brand and doing high level strategy.
Yeah, that's a core insight right there. Yeah.
So I went in mass manufacturing. I had the product sent to a warehouse. The warehouse was connected through our store. So an order would go through. The warehouse would get the order. The customer would get the email that the order was processed. The warehouse would then send emails to the customer. It's been packed. It's been shipped. Here's your tracking number. It's been delivered. So the experience for the customer was actually delightful because they got notifications, and I didn't. Most importantly, I didn't get emailed. Right? Where's my product? Where's my product? And so I would wake up, and I've sold 10 while I was sleeping, and knowing that those people were going to be taken care of. And so then my goal for the day was my customer, the product selling. Now let's build partnerships. Let's do some things to grow the brand and do the big picture stuff, what I call the fun CEO stuff.
Yeah, it's true. Like there's a lot of advice that's specific for startups that says you want to outsource anything where it's really not in your power set, right? Like maybe there's a software engineer founder that just loves to get into the details of the software and just build it himself, but you really need to extract yourself from that low value work and outsource it to somebody. You can monitor, but you need to focus on how you're going to grow the brand, establish the company, create those partnerships like you talked about. And that's really the value generation aspect of what the CEO is supposed to do.
Absolutely. I wish I was a developer. I'll tell you with TriDefi, I wish I was a developer because outsourcing developers is a lot harder, has been a lot harder than outsourcing manufacturing and fulfillment.
Yeah.
It's like 10 times harder.
It really is kind of a soft product. And there's a lot of people that claim that they're developers, but really when it comes to the back end code that gets delivered, sometimes it's.
I, I mean, I don't want to show everything under the hood, but we're working on our MVP and our minimum viable product. And I've had developers do great work and then just disappear. Even though I have more money and I want to pay them and I want them to do the work, they just, I'm dealing with people across the world who just do great work and then just disappear on me and flake out. And it's been a real challenge to find good developers who will do what it is. And my vision, again, is not easy to do. And I'm having a hard time getting this thing across the finish line because it's built, the site is up, but not everything works the way I need it to work. And I need to balance getting it done, but also getting all the things done on it that I want to get done. In other words, I need people to develop it, but I also need to stop at some point and say, okay, it's good enough for right now. We just need to get this thing out there.
Okay. We need users. We need actual test cases that are going through so that we can make.
Oh yeah, that's the goal. Yeah.
So paint that vision for us a bit. Like, what does a thriving TriDefi ecosystem enable that wasn't possible before? What does that look like?
Okay. So how this would work is that, and we can break this down to different parts, but the big picture is that I launch the site, I attract gamers under one platform, and we're starting with a game called League of Legends, which is one of the world's most competitive games right now in esports. We're going to ultimately have other games and other tournaments for other games. So right now we got to keep it simple, right? This is an MVP, right? This is a beta test. This is a fraction of what the whole product is going to do, right? So people come to our site, they register, they form a clan or they join a clan. Now, if they form a clan, that's even better because then they're going to want to attract people to join their clan. So they're going to advertise the clan to all their friends and peers, and then it grows from there. So the organic growth is going to be driven by people who desire to create their own clans, because in the gaming scene, there's a need for community and there's a need, and people tend to form groups and clans around basic interests and topics and skill levels and anything. So the good news about that is I'm not doing the advertising for that. The users are, the players are, right? It's just getting the initial users into it and getting them excited about our platform to advertise their clan to other people. So people flock in, they join these clans. We create a tournament, and then people who are in the clans can join the clan to compete in that tournament. The tournaments would be sponsored by a company like Amazon or something like that. Then the tournament is passive. Our platform's connected via API to League of Legends. So when the players play the games, their results contribute to this tournament. And at 30 days, the clan that has the most players with the most wins will win the largest portion of the prize pool tokens. So I'll stop there. That's kind of where it starts.
Yep. No, that makes sense. So there's some prize money that's defined at the end. The winner of all of the individual bracketed battles is the person that walks away with the prize money.
Yeah, and it encourages people to form these clans because the prize pool is based on clan participation, not individual. So people need to build their clans and have as many people that are good at the game in their clan competing to help their clan win. And their clan will get a majority of the money, which is split between all the clan members. And then once they get this money, then they'll be able to do things with these tokens, quote unquote. They can, like I said, they can trade the tokens and swap them for Bitcoin, and then they can sell the Bitcoin if they want, or keep the Bitcoin and let it grow some more, or they can give it to us. We contract with wealth management agencies globally that will take those tokens or take the value of those tokens and grow that. And then if, let's say it's a 6-month lock, then people can, every 6 months, if they want to take it back, they can incur some profit from that. We'll just keep a fraction of it ourselves.
Bit about that initial reach out to the wealth management agencies. Were they like, you want to do what?
Well, I reached out to one of them so far because I know someone who owns one of those wealth management agencies who's just won awards and they're doing really well. And I wanted them to be part of our pitch deck, but he wasn't quite comfortable putting the name of his company on there. But the good news is that there's a willingness to work with us on that. But to get to that point when you're in wealth management, there's a lot of legal red tape that needs to be taken care of. Right now, it's easy to launch a tournament and sponsor tournaments. When we get into wealth management, we're going to have to make sure that we employ know your customer portals and stuff that we know, we understand, we're complying with. We don't want to get in trouble for offering this service and not making sure that we have all our boxes checked, right? So there's a legal element with offering wealth management.
Even within the MVP, you're planning a scaled build up. So start first with the tournaments, find the sponsors, make sure that all that technology works, prove the model, and then
absolutely.
expand.
If we can get that working, and let's say I get a few thousand, 10,000, 5 to 10,000 users, then I can take that back to the venture capitalists that I've already met and pitched to and say, hey, we've got a thriving community now and it's growing, and this is the activity and this is the metrics we can show you. So now I need more money to scale this. So TriDefi is super hard level as far as company building, because I'm not bootstrapping hardly any of it at all. This is being financed by investors and angel investors and stuff at this point right now. And I want to continue to take that on with venture capitalists. But I've pitched this already because it's gotten a lot of attention. And the problem with it historically is that investors right now are not giving money for just ideas anymore.
Right.
They want to see some kind of proof of concept. And that's
why
the
markets have changed a lot.
It has. I mean, when I started TriDefi, I was told, oh yeah, we'll find investors and we'll get this thing going and we'll raise tokens and we'll do a coin offering and it'll be great. And then by the time we launched it, the crypto industry took a huge hit with some scandals and some awful things that happened. And then all the venture capitalists said, whoa, wait a minute here. We're not gonna just throw money at things anymore. And so I had to regroup. I thought paying tons of money for a white paper and a nice pitch deck and fleshing everything out was going to be enough. And now it's not. I had to regroup and go with a development platform that was affordable and hire developers and get something put together. And so that's been kind of a crisis to get that going. And like I said, I'm 90% there. I just need a few things fixed, and then I can start getting people into the platform. Now, did you ask about how to initially get people to it? Is that what you were?
Yeah, well, I've actually, I guess before we get to that, like, what is that? If you're getting close to launch, you're going to start recruiting initial users. Mm-hmm. What does that 12-month goal look like for you? How do you define success for TriDefi?
Sure. So for me, for TriDefi, success in 12 months will be reaching out to some big players in the community and inviting them to come join our platform, and they'll get their following to join our platform. Mm-hmm. I could do that myself. I can hire some interns to reach out to them. I can hire an agency to help out with that. There's things I can do. I'm weighing those options right now to make sure I'm judicious with the funds that I have, and that I'm not doing something that's going to drive me crazy. Then once they get people into the platform, then I'm going to go out to some smaller companies that are hungry for some traffic and make them sponsors of these tournaments, probably without charging them anything at all, just to get the reputation and name built out there. Everyone joining up will understand this is a beta, and there will be rewards at some point for everyone who has tokens in their account. But right now, this is a project, and we need to get people involved. So at the end of 12 months, what I want is a track record of several tournaments with companies involved and businesses, and a thriving community in the thousands of people that are using this and talking about it and buzzing about it. And then I can have all the proof I need to show this to the venture capitalists that would be interested in this. So that's what 12.
Sounds like your first acquisition play, creators or influencers in the space, right?
Mhm.
So you want to leverage their audience. You've got some
Yeah.
credibility that's coming from the sponsors, partner communities as well. So are you going to try to get into existing esports or gaming communities,
Yeah, absolutely.
Twitch or Discord?
Yeah, I think in the end, to work with Discord or to work with Twitch together with Twitch directly would be great. I think to get Twitch's attention, I'm going to have community and business and revenue targets to kind of show that's legitimate. And building up that reputation and buzz and hype is what gets the attention of these larger companies. So I'm not going to go to Twitch on day one and say, hey, I just created a website and let's do something together, right? They're going to be like, whatever. They won't even answer my email. Probably won't even read it. But when I get people involved with Twitch and I start working with them and networking through them, then we can work some things out there. But I also need to know what Twitch needs and how we can partner with Twitch and help them out, right? Because a partnership has to be meaningful to them, and how is it going to drive revenue for them? How can my website help that? But mainly it's just getting right now players and companies involved. And if I get, let's say I go to a small company and I say, I want you to be the part of this tournament, be a quote unquote sponsor. Then we put up the assets for that company, the link for their product and whatnot. And then at the end of 30 days, we can measure traffic and we can measure sales with them. And then I've got a good referenceable customer and a good case study to show other companies, right? And you just kind of build from that.
Yeah, and so I think a lot of startup founders deal with that challenge, right? So they have a great idea, they've
Mhm.
built a great product, but they need distribution, they need initial partnerships that in order to get the word out. They may not be cash rich, so they're not able to pay for advertising. How are you going about deciding what that first test is that you really, where are you going to focus your effort first to get that initial bit of traction?
So with TriDefi particularly, it's going to where the League of Legends players are. Where are the players? Where's the community? Well, a lot of them are on Reddit. So we'll probably focus a lot on recruiting through Reddit. And we can certainly make a post on Reddit and try to recruit that way. And that's worth trying. But what I think is going to be stronger is to reach out to people on Reddit that are very active members and say, hey, we've got a proposition for you.
Yeah.
And can we have you promote this and give this a try? And we really want this to be a grassroots thing where these people are like, yeah, this is great, I'm excited about this, I'm totally going to promote this. So when it comes from within the community, the pull is very strong. So the answer to this is cold outreach. I mean, there's just no way around it. When I first started my first company years ago with GlomTom, I thought, well, if I build a website, they'll come, right? If you build it, they'll come. And you don't realize what a molecule of water in the ocean your website is, and the great ocean of websites and markets in the world, right? It's so feels so small. And how do you go from nothing, no traffic, no sales, to getting people buzzing about your product and talking about it? And it was all outreach. And with GlomTom, it was a similar story. No ad revenue, no sales. I went to a convention and paid for a booth at a gamer convention that attracted 90,000 attendees.
Wow.
It wasn't cheap, but I knew I had to build some presence there. And I built partnerships there. And I came out of that convention with a kind of an unofficial partnership with Sony PlayStation. So
It's a great success.
it is. Yeah. I mean, that was why I was there, was to network with people and to talk to people. And it was the players. It's a really cool story. If you don't mind me telling it real
Yeah, no,
quick.
go for it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so at the convention, some players came to my booth and were looking at my product. And the GlomTom, just for the audience listening, the GlomTom was an ergonomic, for lack of a better term, was an ergonomic cushion. In fact, I have one next to me here, one of the originals. This is it right here. And it sits on your lap and you hold a controller over it, or a laptop or a phone or anything that you're going to be doing, and it relieves stress and tension in your neck, back, and shoulders. And so I had it developed because no one else out there was making something like this. And I really wanted this type of ergonomic support as a gamer myself. So now there's like 50 competitors on Amazon for this product, but that's Steph's issue, we're not mine. So
Any good idea, it gets replicated very.
it does. And I was, the first in on with this. And so anyhow, I had people trying this out. The gamers liked it at the convention. And one particular person, I was looking at her business card around 2 a.m. in my hotel room before one of the days of the convention, and I saw that she was part of the PlayStation influencer team, kind of an MVP for Sony PlayStation. And so I tweeted her on X and said, "Why don't you come back to my booth?" And she said, "Sure." And so she came back the next day, and I'm like, "Hey, you're kind of a big deal. What's going on here? Well, tell me more about what you're doing with Sony." And she's like, "Oh, this and that." And she's like, "I really like your product." And I'm like, "Cool. Well, thanks for coming back up to visit me." So again, another day goes by, nothing happens. Then the final day, all of a sudden she shows up with like her whole MVP team of Sony PlayStation influencers, and they pulled the Sony PlayStation guy off the booth, the Sony booth on the main floor with all the smoking lasers and the gigantic booths. They pulled this guy from the booth. He came up with them to see the product. And so I got to talking to him, got to talking to the players, signed on many of the players to be influencers for my product right there on the spot, and
Amazing.
then kept in touch with Sony and worked and did different things to help them scratch some backs that they needed to help out. In return, continued access to their MVP team and being able to partner with people that they were partnering with. It's a really cool. So it's really cool that it shows that you just have to show up. But you also need to. My background's in account management and sales. I'm naturally drawn towards outreach and building relationships, and that's just one example of what
Yeah.
I did and what I plan to do with TriDefi. So I've done it before with GlomTom, and I don't see any issues with TriDefi getting some of the same partnerships. But I have to be there. I have to be present. I have to reach out, or I have to pay people to be present and reach out. Right.
Yeah. So talk about that, because I think a lot of founders they'll either go the show or the exposition route in order to start talking about their product, and they put forth the investment like you did, they get the table. Talk through a bit of that, what was that decision making process? Man, I'm going to drop a couple $1,000s on this table, get myself there, exposing what my idea is. Hopefully I get there. And then when you saw that person and you started to cultivate that relationship, like what were some of those actions? Like what were those clues? How did you begin to engage the team from Sony?
Well, getting the table for this conference took months. It took like 6, 7 months before they even responded to my emails. I kept hounding the person in charge once I found out who they were of issuing the tables, and I didn't think I was going to go to that show. And
And
then
why
when
was it that show above? Is that like the biggest show for?
yeah, pretty much it's called the Penny Arcade Expo,
Okay.
and they have one in Australia. They have one on the East Coast and the South and the West Coast, and so it's a huge convention. Like I said, it attracts 90,000 people at once, and so getting a booth at one of these things is obviously a waiting list of companies who want to get in. So I must have just been persistently buzzing this guy enough that he must have had a cancellation or something like that. But I also funded on a Kickstarter, so I had some clout going there as well. I guess that's a whole other story. But again, whatever you can do to build up clout and build up your reputation, whether you fund successfully Kickstarter, whether you get funded, me talking to you on this podcast for me is a huge success. Anything that just builds your brand and builds your presence out there is a big deal. Now, the decision as far as building relationships with Sony and the people that were involved with it, it's just for me, I took the time to get to know who it was who took interest in my product.
Yeah.
Okay. And once they took interest in my product, I wanted to know who they were. And if I hadn't looked at this woman's card and looked at her social media, I would have had no idea who she was. The whole opportunity could have just slipped right by me if I hadn't taken time to just go through everything and go, okay, who do I talk to today? Who are these people?
And it's telling. At 2 o'clock in the morning, you're going through the business cards that you received the previous day and trying to check who these people.
You never know. You just never know who it is that's going to visit you and talk to you. And if they gave me their business card, that meant there was enough interest, right? And they had what they wanted to do, and obviously they have business cards because they had their own agenda to build their presence.
Right.
So it's about helping other businesses. It's about helping other people, helping people in the community. My first company grew so fast because I helped a lot of people in the community, and they in turn promoted my company live on their streams and on their social media. I promoted them on my social media. I made my company about the community. I made my company about the customers and community. I didn't make it about the product. Anyone can post something about their product. Look at my product. Look at what it does. Look at the features and benefits. People just do not respond to that.
I was having a conversation yesterday with some of my colleagues, and we were talking about they had just come from Ad Week, which was last week in New York, and some of the conversations that were being presented on. And what we were talking about is a couple of years ago, the big conversation was, hey, this is an attention-based economy. You're competing for a consumer's attention on your product, and there's a lot of distractions, and you need to make sure that you're going after the attention. And now the conversation is more focused on authenticity and who is really out there expressing what the brand stands for, what your product can do as authentically as possible, and finding partnerships that align with what your brand stands for and being able to have them talk about your product as authentically as possible. Both the good things and the bad things. Hey, I wish it did this, but this thing's amazing just the way that it is. And that authenticity gives a lot of weight to the product. Like you were talking about, you need to build that credibility, and other people can lend that credibility to your product, especially in those initial stages.
Oh, 100%. And we're blind. We have blinders on now to ads, and with AI coming out, and it's so. I love AI, and that's a whole other. That's probably a whole other podcast. But there's platforms that say, you know what, just put it in AI, and we'll just schedule and create all the posts for you, and it loses that authenticity. And people know when they're seeing AI ads in their AI posts for the most part, and especially in the gaming community, they're very sensitive to that. And it's tempting for me to just outsource AI for my business and say, okay, just market this and just plaster as much as possible with low quality content that just pounds the same message over and over. But you're getting back into the here's us, look at our product, we've got a product. And you're absolutely right. This has to be coming from within. And the $1,000,000 question is, how do you have it come from within? And you have to reach out to people and help them with what their problems are and what they value in order for them to reciprocate. That's the whole point of all this, right? But companies are thinking, well, how do we do that? And if you're a founder of a company and you're low on money and staff, how do you do it, right? How do I do it? That's the question. And
And
there's no
so
way
I
around.
guess on that one, like what's that big constraint that you have right now? You're building this company, you've done some seed round, you've got development that you're
Mhm.
finalizing. What's that constraint that you have around your 12-month outcome that you want?
Time and emotional energy. Trusting if I have someone else do this for me, can I
Yeah,
trust them to do it? I'll give you an example. When I that back to that convention that I purchased a booth at, I actually had 6 passes, and I reached out into the community and brought in a team of interns, for lack of a better term, to staff my booth. And I said, because passes were sold out for this thing. So for people to get a vendor pass meant they got in early hours, they got to stay for parties afterwards, and they got better access than anyone. And
the cool
most
access.
important, they got a free pass.
Yeah,
So I had this motley crew of people that I never met before with free badges. And ultimately, what ended up happening is most of them I just dismissed and said, just enjoy the whole conference, just have fun at the convention. I'm just gonna do this all on my own, because I watched them talk about my product, and it just wasn't how I'm like, these people are coming to test my product. You don't know who these people are, right? If they're with Sony or whatnot. I mean, I really need to make sure that I'm putting my best foot forward. And these were nice people, but they didn't understand my product completely. They didn't go through what I went through emotionally to develop it. It wasn't their baby, right?
right.
And so in the end, I said, you know what? I got this. I can handle it. The foot traffic isn't too bad in the building we're in. So, I'm just gonna do this on my own. And I know there's kind of this, well, if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself kind of thing. But that's really what it was. And I'm glad, because I might have missed some of the connections that I made. And so I did work a few more of those conventions. I traveled and took my show on the road, and I worked them all on my own. And I would bring my brother or even my father at one point to help me staff the booth, because I had enough time to work with them, and they understood everything that I was trying to accomplish. So, and they let me handle most of those conversations and logistics. So
So your brother and your dad were kind of your initial hires then on the.
pretty much, as far as doing these staff traveling and taking the show, down to Texas from Washington's, but yeah, I kept the staff pretty lean after giving out all the passes. So
Well, and I think not just in what you're describing, but when it comes to demos, brand ambassadors, and just getting that training right, I think that's a big gap for a lot of brands. Is that you can find people that'll demo your product. CPG companies do it all the time inside of the grocery store, right? But if they're not passionate about the problem that you're solving, or if they don't align with the target that you're going after, there is kind of this disconnect, right? With trying to connect with who you actually want to sell to. Are they able to communicate the benefits the way that you want it to be positioned? Are they hitting the right points? Can they pivot based on what they're hearing? And it's not easy. And I think a lot of times that initial work and fine tuning the pitch, it has to be done by the founder. And you record it, train somebody side by side so that you can eventually remove yourself, like we talked about earlier. But at the beginning days, the CEO is the primary seller of the organization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. And you know how we solved this problem with GlomTom particularly is we closed up our partnership program. And if people wanted to be part of it, they had to apply and they had to specifically write out what it is that drew them to the product. And I hired an intern to sort through all those because we were getting so many applications and I didn't have time to read all of them. And if someone was like, you can tell the people who just didn't care, and didn't really have anything valuable. So we would reject them. But if someone would say, I love this product for this reason and that, and really want to be part of your brand, and they get it, then we would accept them as a partner. And so that really helped make sure that our message was on point with our partners. And so that's a good way of doing it.
Yeah. So as you think about TriDefi, what are some of those key decisions that you're looking to make now? Like, and how are you weighing the different options? You talked about need for user acquisition. You've got the launch of the product and the final development. How do you structure the way that you're going through the decision making process and basically placing the bet on what's going to be the direction you want to go?
There's two aspects to this. One is going to be data driven. So when we bring people in, I start to see some success. I need to measure who is the most successful at bringing, like, the clans. Who's growing their clan the fastest? What can I find out about that person? How are they promoting it? And then I can take that and work with other influencers or find similar influencers that have a similar approach to them. And so there's the data driven part where I can measure that. But the other part is being able to pivot and make decisions immediately and quickly based on that data. And so I think a weakness that a lot of large companies, corporations have is they can't pivot quickly. And I've heard quotes that the large corporations are terrified about the two guys in the garage, right? Because those guys can pivot and change really quickly. And so there has to be some versatility that's there to help you make those decisions. But it starts with data, observation, and pivoting based on that. I was wrong about my customers with GlomTom. I was completely wrong about who it would sell to. And I found that out at that convention, talking to people. I thought it would be just people like me who were just enthusiasts. No. The product sold to the highest user hardcore professionals, the people who streamed, who spent 10 hours a day in front of a camera streaming or 10 hours a day practicing the game for eSports team. Those are the people that resonated with the product. So I immediately stopped marketing or talking about the product as a casual or even enthusiast or hardcore gamer. It wasn't even strong enough. It had to go for the most elite, the most highest use, intensive use base. And so going after the Twitch streamers and the esports enthusiasts really is what helped the product and the company take off. So with TriDefi, it's going to be a very similar thing. I could be wrong about which League of Legends players want to create clans on my platform.
Right.
I could be entirely wrong. I have to be willing to see that and not be prideful and like, okay, well, I made a mistake there. I'm going to pivot though, and we're going to switch gears.
But that is such an important learning. Some of the VC founders VC investors that I've spoken to, one of the things that I took away was when they're looking and evaluating an idea, a lot of times what they're really looking for is who the founder and the team that's there that's working on the product, because the product could be complete crap. Like no one could love it. But what they're really investing is the chemistry and the idea and who that team is, because they know that they're going to work and they're going to figure out how to pivot. And then there's plenty of examples of, I think Instagram wasn't initially a scrolling app for social media. It was a completely different concept. And as they went through, I think they went through Y Combinator actually. And as they went through iterating the concept, what they actually ended up having is now a much more visual interface and people sharing their own photos of things. And
Oh
Just a
god,
willingness to not be married to your idea and be willing to evolve it based upon data, like you were saying.
100%. And the team with Reddit, for example, when they started Reddit, they were creating their own posts with each other just to get people to engage. I mean, you know, that's what I love about business. They're just
Yeah.
filled with stories of crazy things, incredible things people have done in order to get the company going.
Yeah.
And the team's important.
You just reminded me, I think it was one of the episodes of How I Built This, the podcast with Guy Raz, and he was interviewing the founders of Airbnb, and they had almost that oh shit moment of they published the platform. I think they were renting out their own house
Mhm.
as a test case, and then somebody actually reserved it, and they were like, oh, like, all right, what are we going to go do? And then they would fly around the country with people that were willing to do it, were willing to put their houses up and go through like host scenario and really perfecting the way that experience was working. And like you said, if you don't do it yourself, if you don't lead it yourself, you're going to miss out on some of those learning opportunities and how to improve and what's going on with the customer experience overall.
Absolutely. We did an accelerator with a venture capital firm last year, and it was like a 1 month boot camp, right, of projects and things we had to fill out and plan and work with people. And one of the key aspects that I remember from the accelerator is the user journey. What is the user journey for your website when they sign in and use the product? And going through the user journey has really opened my eyes to I've never developed a software as a service before. I've never developed a web-based platform, and I'm learning a lot from that and what to do, what not to do, and realizing, wow, I didn't even think about this until I got through and put myself in the shoes of a user. So you're right. I have to be involved myself. I'll be creating these tournaments. I'll be reaching out to the companies. I'll be reaching out to the community. I'll be trying to do as much as I can on my own to make sure that I'm babysitting this all the way through. And that's not for everyone, but for the software as a service industry and people who are building platforms based on AI and all this kind of stuff, a lot of people, I've been watching this, a lot of people will build a platform that charges a monthly fee or whatever it is, whatever business it is. And then they'll say, okay, I've built this and now I'm going to go out and try to get the community involved with this. And from people that I've been watching that have done this successfully, they actually build the community first.
Mm.
And get the hype going so that when the platform is available, they've already got a very rabid user base. That is kind of putting the cart before the horse for some people, but I just think there is something to that. And I'm really going to try to take that approach with TriDefi, that I need a user base. I need a rabid user base. It was the user base that got me to my first esports tournament with GlomTom. My dream was to have GlomTom be present at an esports tournament, like in one of those arena type things. And I had that happen, but it was because the user base. I couldn't afford to pay my way into one of those.
Yeah, but what somebody brought it with them, and it was on. Is that how it
Well,
happened?
the company that was holding the tournament said, okay, you can come there, but it's $10,000 to be there. And I'm like, well, I don't have $10,000 right now. I'm sorry, I really can't do this. I love the game that you're doing and all that. We have, a community, and I got that company's attention because so many people that were promoting my product were playing that game, and so I started promoting that game as well as the product, and that got that company's attention. Because all of a sudden they're like, wow, we're getting a lot of buzz and we're getting a lot of noise from this product and this company that has this product, GlomTom, and a lot of GlomTom's influencers are playing our game. So that's why that company reached out to me and said, hey, do you want to pay us $10,000 to come to the tournament? I said, no, I can't do that. So then a few weeks go by and it's about maybe less than a month before the tournament. And the company emails me back and says, oh, by the way, just come down to the tournament. You don't have to pay. Just be there. I'm like, okay. So I scraped money together to, get plane tickets and a hotel down the street. And when I got there, it was GlomTom, it was Amazon, and it was Nvidia. Those were the three companies there at that tournament. I guarantee Amazon and Nvidia paid money,
Yeah.
but it was incredible. I was like, wow, to sit at the table with kings, right? And so, but I asked someone there, how did I end up here? How did this happen? And they said it was the community. It was people in the community said, we want this company there. We want to try the product, and the company that was holding the tournament said, okay, that's fine. So it was community driven. The power of community is enormous.
There's an interesting new bank, one that comes to mind that of using the way that they developed their bank was first they launched with friends and family, right?
Hmm.
So like we talked about, close group of people, prove out the concept. But then they began to expand in creating a community, but they were gating access. So they were creating the illusion of scarcity of joining the bank because they had good PR that was talking about the benefits and the different approach to banking and how they were trying to disrupt the traditional banking approach in Brazil. And they had an inflow of people that were signing up. They were giving over their name and email address, and they would just start gating access. And so it created this idea of scarcity that people wanted it. There was buzz going on that they were creating on the PR side. They had a few people that were influencers that were creating some of that draw, and then they just gated it, and it just made people go rabid. They were, I want this, and then they eventually opened it up broader, but it was their way of controlling growth as well. So they didn't want 10,000 people coming in, signing up, their systems crash, and then nothing works and they get a bad rep from a brand standpoint. But that control, that scarcity tactic really seemed to work well for them. And I think they've used that same approach in multiple markets now as they expand out of their main market.
I remember this from my MBA school, and I don't remember the term, but is that scarcity marketing, right? It's a perceived value on the product that it's exclusive, that it's high level, that it's only for select people, that not everyone's going to be part of that. When I hired my intern to manage the influencer team for GlomTom, the first thing he did was shut down access to our partnership program. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, why would you do that? And he says, because we can't just let everyone in. We have to be exclusive now in who we let in. And that grew. I mean, it got to the point where people were sending
Smart
out
intern.
smart, very smart intern, good guy. And what happened is people started sending, social media messages out to their following saying, I really want to be part of GlomTom. Hopefully I sent in an application. And then I would read that and then retweet it. And it showed other people following us and they're following. Then they'd retweet my tweet with my comment. What I mean? It going viral that way. And then all of a sudden it became this thing like, well, I really want to be part of it. Am I going to become part of it? And other people are like, well, if they get signed up to become part of it, I want to be part of it too. And I have a channel and I have people and I have a following. And so it did. It became, and when one person got in, then all their peers that were popular wanted to get in as part of the cool kids club too. And so you're right. The exclusivity is a huge part of it. And if a company can do that, it can really help grow their brand. One quick story.
Yeah.
How a lot of this started is when, and I have a picture of this in my book, when this one woman was a partner of ours and she posted a picture of herself holding the product. And it's a really good picture and she's very attractive. And um, I put it, I reshared it on our social media, and then something very strange happened. All of a sudden, other people who had the product, particularly women, started sharing this picture of themselves holding my product. And so then I started sharing them. And then all their female streamers that wanted to be part of our company all of a sudden started applying to become partners because they saw us sharing pictures of our streamers. Now, the partnership split between men and women for GlomTom was 50-50.
Mm.
But the difference is that the women are marketing themselves for the channel, whereas the men usually had a logo and had a different approach to marketing. I gave them just as much airtime and shared all their stuff and their logos. But a lot of people looked at GlomTom and said, well, how are you doing this? And why are you just focusing on women? I'm like, we're not. This is just what's happening. But it started with that one woman sharing that picture, just sparked this whole thing. It became a phenomenon. It was crazy.
Yeah, Cliff, I gotta applaud you, I think, for your intuitiveness on what's going to work from a virality standpoint and just how to engage a community. It's a very tough skill to learn. And I
Thank
think a
you.
lot of businesses get it wrong. So congrats on that.
Oh, thank you.
Hopefully, hopefully you can create the same lightning can strike twice with TriDefi and as you get
I
that.
believe, but it's a moving target. What worked in 2014, we're looking at 11, 12 years later now, and things have changed a bit. So again, you're right. It's intuition. It's watching and thinking about, okay, what's working, what's not working, and not being afraid to try different things because you'll be surprised at what works. And you'll be surprised at what doesn't work, what you thought would work.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes it's the cheapest the activities that actually give the most traction, right?
Some people crave real attention, real connections. That doesn't cost any money to reach out to someone. It doesn't cost any money to help someone promote their company or their business or their platform. It doesn't cost any money usually to help other companies meeting their needs and building their platform. And so GlomTom was built on partnerships. TriDefi is going to be very similar. I guarantee, I promise you. Again, I wrote the book on how to do it. I'm not going to deviate from what I did before, and I have high expectations. If I got this far with people believing in me and giving me a bunch of money to start this, and I've got venture capitalist firms that have allowed me to pitch for them and invited me to pitch for them. By the way, there's a whole economy around venture capitalism, so that's a whole other discussion. But and trying to get into that, get airtime with those people. There's a lot of companies that charge you money to do that. So anyhow, I know I'm onto something good here. I know I'm in the right track. There's technical issues that are challenging for me right now, but like you helped me flesh out here on this podcast, knowing where I want to be in 12 months and how I'm going to do it. It doesn't have to be really complicated, but it does have to be something where I'm making an effort and I'm doing it, and I have to have the mental and emotional fortitude to do it. And I've done it before. And I didn't think I was going to do it again, but here I am.
You couldn't stay away.
I couldn't. I just can't.
Well, Clif, before we wrap up, where can listeners find you and TriDefi online?
So they can find me on LinkedIn at Clif Chamblis. And then they can find me on Instagram at Clif Chamblis, just one F in my name, Clif Chamblis. And then TriDefi is tridefi.gg. I need to build the contact link on the front page there, but I'll have that there so people can contact me that way. And those are really the best ways to reach me right now.
Great. Thanks for that, Clif. And thanks for coming on the Growth Mandate. I really appreciate you bringing your experience and energy and leaving us with a lot of things to think about. I think the insights around building community and partnerships and just putting the brand out there is very valuable for really both mature businesses and startups. So thanks a lot for being here.
Anytime.
Yeah. So if you enjoyed this conversation with Clif, please remember to subscribe to the Growth Mandate, leave us a review, and share this episode with a fellow leader who might benefit from these insights. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.